you are looking to start a revolution, I created a social media solution.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're looking at how Marie Antoinette, the last queen of France, has been depicted in movies, TV shows, and video games throughout the decades.
Order. Who's the defendant today? Looks pretty fancy.
Indeed, Your Honor. This is Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France.
The Silent Era. Thanks to her beauty, the dramatic events of her life, and her death by execution in 1793 at just 37 years old, Marie Antoinette has been a subject of fascination in popular culture for centuries. During her reign, her reputation suffered among the common people due in part to her lavish spending and extramarital affairs, and an increasing public hostility toward the monarchy in general. Over the last 100 years, she's been portrayed as everything from a frivolous airhead to a savvy ruler, a sympathetic mother to a malicious shrew.
A convenience symbol, and an example of the public's appetite for smearing prominent women with their own fantasies and frustrations.
So what you're saying is she was guilty of being queen?
Marie Antoinette's first known film appearance was 1914's The Reign of Terror, also known as Le Chevalier de Maison Rouge, in which she's played by Léa Piron. The film, adapted from an Alexandre Dumas novel, depicts a failed attempt to rescue her from prison during the French Revolution. Though she's not on screen that much, Piron plays her with stoicism, as though she has accepted her fate, while the revolutionaries trying to rescue her are played much more dramatically. In 1916, the Queen shows up again in a brief part in My Lady's Slipper, a silent film that unfortunately has been lost to time. The first film to feature Marie Antoinette in a major role was the 1920 Danish horror fantasy Leaves from Satan's Book, which follows the title character as he influences major events in human history. Played by opera singer Tanna Kraft, the imprisoned queen is once again shown as strong and regal, a victim of the inflamed passions of the peasantry. In 1922, we got the first biopic of the queen, Germany's Marie Antoinette, Das Leben einer Königin. Yet again, she's depicted as dignified and pious, almost a martyr. She also makes brief appearances in 3 other films of the decade: 1923's Scaramouche, 1924's Janice Meredith, and 1929's Cagliostro. 1930s. The film industry's fascination with the French queen continued into the 30s, with 4 films featuring her as a character released in 1938 alone.
You are most welcome, Marie Antoinette of Austria.
Marie Antoinette of France, Your Majesty.
Unlike the movies of the 20s, which focused on the Revolution, many of the filmmakers of this era were more interested in personal drama and romantic affairs than politics. First came Captain of the Guard, an American musical that premiered in 1930, which might be the first ever appearance of Marie Antoinette in a film with synchronized sound. It was followed by 1934's Madame du Barry, which revolves around the mistress of Louis XV, who became rivals with Marie after her arrival in France.
You give me your arm, monsieur. I will give you something in return that you will never forget.
What is that, madame?
A kiss, perhaps, or a kingdom.
Over the years, du Barry appeared in many films about the period, including occasionally as the main character. 1937 saw the release of the unusual short film The King Without a Crown. It begins just before the monarch's execution and depicts her son, Louis XVII, being taken away to America where he becomes a missionary to indigenous people. In it, the Queen is again portrayed sympathetically as a distraught and devoted mother.
A tragic little king, for his worshipful subjects consist only of his mother, his sister Marie, and his aunt, the Princess Elizabeth, sister of that king whose life has just ebbed away on the guillotine platform.
In the 1938 American biopic Marie Antoinette, the Queen is characterized as beautiful, passionate, and desired by multiple men, but not particularly politically involved. Star Norma Shearer was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance.
Because I mean to be the Dauphine of France. Not in the way I might have been if we'd stood together. But at least I'll be the brightest, highest figure in this court.
That year also gave us the Italian film The Count of Bresciard, and 2 French films, Let's Go Up the Champs-Élysées and La Marseillaise. The latter was directed by the legendary Jean Renoir, and shows a Rashomon-style look at the French Revolution through multiple points of view. This portrayal of the Queen, played by Lisa Delamare, depicts her as more politically active than other films to date, showing her sitting in on strategy meetings and consulting with generals. 1940s and 50s. Marie Antoinette appears in at least 10 films during these 2 decades, with a wide range of characterization, from arrogant and clever to cute and ditzy. A recurring theme in films about the Queen, which we begin to see during this time, is an exorbitantly expensive necklace, which stems from a real-life scandal, the affair of the diamond necklace.
An admirer of the Queen, the Cardinal de Rohan, bought it, and he delivered it secretly in a garden to a woman whom he thought was the Queen, but who actually was one of these conspirators.
The 1946 French film The Queen's Necklace details a plot to steal the famous jewelry, with Marie Antoinette playing Marie Antoinette as shrewd and distrustful of the traitorous plotters who surround her. 1949's Black Magic is based on a Dumas novel and stars Orson Welles in another retelling of the story of Cagliostro the magician.
There's a special reception in honor of the Paris Faculty of Medicine. Your name has been included.
And shall I have the honor of seeing the real Marie Antoinette?
You can't very well miss her. She sees to that.
It revolves around a plot to secretly replace Marie Antoinette with a Romany girl, with both roles played brilliantly by Nancy Guild. The Queen is depicted as petty and even a bit cold, constantly wary of attempts to undermine her power, and the necklace is, again, a major plot point.
Stones were chosen with particular regard for the whiteness of her royal shoulders.
We're not discussing her shoulders.
The 50s gave us another version of Scaramouche, one with a lot more sword fighting. It also featured the ever-regal Nina Foch as its canny queen.
I will not have you killing off my nobles, either piecemeal or in bunches. Times like these, the nobility must stick together.
The 1954 Italian film Il Cavaliere di Maison Rouge, like 1914's Le Chevalier de Maison Rouge, is an adaptation of Dumas' novel of the same name. It features a group of loyalists attempting to spring the Queen from prison, who is again played as stoic and unflappable. Romanian-French actress Lana Marconi portrayed Marie Antoinette twice during her brief film career, first in 1954's Royal Affairs in Versailles, then in 1956's If Paris Were Told to Us. In the very weird 1957 movie The Story of Mankind, the Queen is depicted as silly, frivolous, and totally oblivious to the plight of the revolutionaries. It's also one of the earliest appearances of her famous line, which is presented here as a historical reality.
Would it be tactless to ask what the poor creatures want?
They protest they haven't any bread, Your Majesty.
No bread indeed. Then let them eat cake!
1960s, 70s, and 80s. The fascination with Marie Antoinette on the big screen died down a bit during this time. She appears in only about 7 films, but she also starts showing up on TV for the first time.
Vous savez, Monsieur de Mirabeau, qu'il nous a fallu pratiquement supplier Messieurs Bailly et de Lafayette pour qu'on nous laisse sortir des Tuileries.
Mais vous n'étiez jamais prisonnier?
This includes the 1963 miniseries Le Chevalier de Maison Rouge, yet another adaptation of Alexandre Dumas' novel. As usual, there's plenty of sword fighting, and the Queen is portrayed as a devoted mother and a resilient prisoner, refusing to let the revolutionaries see her cry when they take her son. In 1979, the Japanese manga The Rose of Versailles was adapted into an animated TV series featuring Marie Antoinette as a major character.
なんて素晴らしい踊り方だ。お名前は？
それは申し上げられませんわ。
今夜あなたをさらっていってしまいたい。
In her early years, she's depicted as being primarily concerned with looking beautiful, wearing fancy clothes, and being head over heels for the Swedish Count Hans Axel von Fersen. Later in life, she devotes herself to her children at the expense of her political duties. In the 1970s PBS series Meeting of Minds, host Steve Allen interviews historical figures in a talk show-like format. Jane Meadows appears as Marie Antoinette, and although she relates some interesting historical facts, she's also shown to be highly concerned with fashion, hairdos, and the stateliness of her palaces. Historical comedies become more popular during this period, and Marie Antoinette shows up in several of them. In 1970's Start the Revolution Without Me, Billy Whitelaw plays the Queen alongside stars Gene Wilder and Donald Sutherland.
Make haste, escargot.
I go with God.
Go with whomever you please, just take your horse.
In this version of events, Marie is cunning and deceitful, cheating on her husband and plotting against him. In Mel Brooks's History of the World Part 1, on the other hand, Louis is depicted as the lecher while the Queen is mostly an innocent bystander.
Knight jumps Queen! Bishop jumps
Oui!
1990s. Perhaps the most accurate depiction of Marie Antoinette's final days is 1990's L'Autrichienne, a French film that used the actual minutes from the Queen's trial as its source material. Historical film aficionados have praised its realism, as well as Ute Lemper's incredibly moving performance. In this complex portrayal, the Queen isn't a frivolous young woman obsessed with fancy things, nor a stoic victim of the revolutionaries. Instead, she's a complete human being who shows both courage and fear, as well as anger, sadness, hope, and hopelessness. On the complete opposite side of the spectrum, the BBC in 1999 turned the intrigues at the Palace of Versailles into a sitcom called Let Them Eat Cake. Despite the title, Marie Antoinette is not the main character, but she does make several unforgettable appearances.
I must tell you that here in Austria, everyone is weeping.
France?
Yeah, France, Spain, everyone is weeping.
Elizabeth Barrington plays her as an airhead with an absurd hairstyle who speaks English with an over-the-top Austrian accent. Honestly, the comedy works better than you expect it to.
We must get you some as a reward for all the vital and fearsome work what you do without a whinging word, to make this wicked world a more worthwhile place.
Marie also appears briefly in 1995's Jefferson in Paris, a historical drama that, believe it or not, stars Nick Nolte as Thomas Jefferson. The Queen is a minor character who's shown to be a gracious and elegant host, though the monarchy itself is depicted as lavish and corrupt.
I meant to impress upon my daughter the vainglory of these spectacles. May we Americans never emulate them, nor burden our taxpayers with such useless splendors.
The 90s also saw the first appearance of Marie Antoinette in video games, specifically Castlevania Bloodlines, and the point-and-click adventure game of Light and Darkness, The Prophecy. 2000s and 2010s. This was not a good time for Marie Antoinette on the big screen. Charles Shire's The Affair of the Necklace was released in 2001, and critics hated it, especially Hilary Swank's casting as Jeanne de Saint-Remy de Valois.
You needed a title to gain access to the royal court. You took me on because I bought you that title. I've never been more than a stepping stone in your eyes.
Jolie Richardson plays the Queen, who's depicted as icy, arrogant, and vengeful, and the nobles at court gossip openly about her affairs. Next came Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette starring Kirsten Dunst, a highly polarizing film due partly to the director's odd choice to use a modern soundtrack and a number of other anachronisms.
Radish.
Oh, Leonard, you're the best. It's not too much, is it?
Although some critics loved these bold decisions, others accused the film of prioritizing style over substance. The portrayal of the Queen, on the other hand, isn't particularly innovative. She's young, naive, and obsessed with fine clothing, parties, and gambling. And for the record, although the real Marie Antoinette obviously didn't speak English in her daily life, she sounds weird with an American accent.
Letting everyone down would be my greatest unhappiness.
I am pleased Madame is taking this seriously.
Things were slightly better for the French Queen in the 2010s, which started with her portrayal by Diane Kruger in 2012's Farewell, My Queen. The movie is told from the perspective of a servant who was infatuated with Marie Antoinette, and shows the Queen having an affair with the Duchess of Polignac.
Que je sente une dernière fois le parfum de votre jeunesse. Ne laissez pas que je vous abandonne.
She's depicted as being deeply in love with the Duchess and risking everything, including her servant's safety, to help her escape to freedom when the revolution begins. Sadly, this complex portrayal was followed up by a weird and pretty insulting appearance in 2014's Mr. Peabody and Sherman.
Marie Antoinette sure likes cake, Mr. Peabody.
Indeed she does. Marie was a woman with a prodigious appetite for all things covered with frosting.
And of course, we can't forget Detox's performance as a similarly cake-obsessed queen in Season 2 of RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars.
Put on your opulent jewels, hair, and dress, and say it in 140 characters, or less!
Recent appearances. The 2020s seemed to spell a resurgence of interest in Marie Antoinette, with a slew of new movies and shows already on offer. She shows up in Season 5 of DC's Legends of Tomorrow, and despite spending most of the episode as a disembodied head, she's surprisingly sympathetic.
People saw the dresses, the parties, the hair, and they assumed I was a speared brat. Really? I was just a lonely Viennese girl.
Her cameo in the Animaniacs revival, on the other hand, was less flattering. 2022 gave us Chevalier, not another Dumas adaptation, but the fictional story of a black musical prodigy who becomes a favorite of the Queen. In it, Marie Antoinette takes a liking to the young man, but shows her true colors when he dares to speak against her.
If you take to the stage, my guards will arrest you at once. I will take everything from you. I will strip you of your title. You will no longer be a chevalier. You will be nothing.
In 2023, we got another Madame du Barry story in Jeanne du Barry, starring, interestingly, Johnny Depp as Louis XV. Because Marie Antoinette and du Barry were real-life rivals, most movies depict one as sympathetic and the other as duplicitous or just plain evil. However, this film accurately shows Marie as being extremely young and out of her element when she first arrives in France.
Tu peux parler un peu allemand?
Non.
Mais je peux t'apprendre? Peut-être plus tard.
The rivalry evolves not because she truly wishes to make an enemy out of du Barry, but because she feels pressured by the vitriolic gossip coming from the many courtiers who disdain the king's consort. The Queen also makes a wordless cameo in the opening of Ridley Scott's Napoleon, which depicts her on her way to her execution with her head held high.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
The BBC took another stab at a series set in a pre-revolutionary France with Marie Antoinette, which premiered in 2022. The show hits all the usual beats: Marie as a naive teenager, the awkward start to her marriage to Louis, the rivalry with du Barry, the alleged affair with Count Fuchsen.
Where on earth did you hear that?
It's the topic of conversation.
I thought they only talked about me.
The program puts a modern, somewhat feminist spin on the character, which of course is a reflection of 21st century sensibilities, not the reality of 18th century French culture. It's an interesting contrast to the earliest portrayals of the young queen, and a fascinating illustration of how her image has evolved over the last century.
It's a show about a woman who's struggling to find her place in life as a rebel, as queen, as a mother, as an icon, and as a human being.
Which version of Marie Antoinette did you find the most captivating? Let us know in the comments.
Yours is not usually permitted at court performances.
Why not? It was wonderful! Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo. And be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.